Okay, well, welcome everyone to another segment of the Newsroom. We have Pine Bluff Police Chief Denise Richardson with us this morning. Welcome,
Good
Chief.
morning. Good morning. Thank
Thank
you.
you for taking the time out to do this.
Thank you.
Um, I just want to start out just for the uninitiated. Just tell us a little about yourself. Are you? I can't remember. Are you from Pine? Did you grow up in Pine Bluff?
No, I migrated to Pine Bluff. I've
Okay.
been here about 30 years. It's been my home. It is my home now. And I've been working here for 29 years. And it's just home to me now. But I did move here from Southwest Arkansas, a small town called Tollet, Arkansas, which is in Howard County. And I've been here since I came here to UAPB to college.
So you went to college here?
Yes.
What'd you major in?
Actually, my first major was journalism.
Okay.
And I finished in criminal justice.
The light
Yeah.
hit you and you said,
Yeah,
let me
yeah.
not
So,
do that.
luck of the draw, life happens, and I switched majors to criminal justice, and that's what my degree is in.
Okay. And you started out as like a patrol person?
I started out as a recruit.
Recruit.
Yeah, I was hired here in '94, and I started just like everyone else as a recruit officer, and went through the training program and through the ranks.
So what year was that? 30 years ago. That's
94.
94. You've seen some things change since then. I know I've had people ask me about newspapers and our town has dropped in population and whatnot. We'll circle back with some of those questions. So you've been police chief for about a half a year. You
Right.
came in late July.
Right.
Describe the department that you took over.
Our department, really, then and now, was in transition. And by transition, I mean we are dealing with a lot of people who are getting ready to retire just through natural attrition. They've done their time. They have reached their full number of 28 years, and they are considering and are retiring. So we were sort of dealing with that at the time I came in, and we are still dealing with that. We're also, as every other agency is, working through hiring, a diminished hiring pool, different generation of officers, and trying to retain the people who have been here working the longest, working the hardest. So hiring and retention and retirement by natural attrition is sort of what I inherited, and that was the initial challenge.
I want to get back to that in just a minute, but you and I were talking, I guess it's been 2 months ago about, I can't remember what exactly. Oh, we were talking about Detective Collins. And you said you had some new programs that you were putting into action. Tell me the kinds of things that you have done since you took over.
Our main issue is, of course, records keeping. We are poised to move into 21st century policing, which depends heavily upon data and intelligence, and not just data, but data analysis, so we can see where better to use our resources, which areas of the city need more attention and or less. So one of the main things we're upgrading is our software for statistics, for the analyzation of those statistics, and the use of those statistics. So that is one of the things that we're doing. The other is we entered into a contract with a software company called IA Pro. IA Pro runs a platform called Blue Teams, which is simply a transparency, accountability, productivity software. And what it does is a lot of the things we're doing on paper that we may or may not let fall through the cracks, it won't fall through with this software. It keeps track of our officers just in case maybe they go on a slide. And by that I mean, if we have a really good officer and over the course of 5 or 6 months we see a progression in policy violations, just in the quality and productivity of their work, that software is going to flag that officer. So we'll know if we need to engage in some early intervention to keep them employed and to keep them on track. So the software is used by all progressive agencies in the United States and outside the United States. So there is a basis for its use. We have the trainers ready to go, and all we're waiting on now is the server, because anytime you upgrade software, you have to upgrade your technology, and there's a cost associated with that. So that is the main thing that I wanted to do, and it's online. The second thing I wanted was for us to start working on our accreditation, and that was important to me because accreditation gives us a goal that's high above the minimum standard. Every agency in the state meets the minimum standard. But I know that Pine Bluff is better than that. Our officers are better than that. And we need a higher level to reach. And what the accreditation does is it gives us the model to do that. And not only do we have to meet the minimums, we have to meet the maximum. And we have to maintain that. So regardless of who is in the chief spot, regardless of what programs we started or ended, this standard has to be met in order for us to maintain that accreditation. And what that does is remove a lot of things that chiefs would do just because they can do it, just because they want to do it. You won't be able to do that and maintain accreditation with the state agency. So we want to put something in place that no matter who is in the top spot, the agency stays at the top of the list.
Are there a lot of police forces in Arkansas that are accredited?
There are not. No, and there are two levels of accreditation. There's an initial level, which is where we're going to start, and we hope to end up at the final level. There's Tier 1 and Tier 2. But there are only about 8 agencies that are Tier 2 accredited in the state, and I believe there are even fewer Tier 1 accredited. So it's a big goal. It's a hard task. It's not easy, and it won't happen overnight, but we are very close to reaching Tier 2 already, and probably within the next month, we'll talk again and I'll have it.
I'm guessing that's going to cost some money.
It's minimal. The initial cost for Tier 2 is $750. So for less than $1,000, we will be at the top of the food chain. And for a little bit more, we'll be where we want to be in terms of standards. So the cost is minimal to us, but the value is really immeasurable.
Back to the personnel, I know that's been in the news for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to an officer recently who said that there was a shift where we only had one patrol officer
Mm-hmm.
roaming or cruising the streets of Pine Bluff. Has it gotten that dire?
No, and that's not true. And you have to be careful when you listen to patrol officers about what's going on at the police department. They only know at their level, okay? And there are several levels. Now, while there may be one listed on the worksheet, and I'll explain that to you, when we start out a shift, we start with a worksheet, and that sheet will have everybody on there who is off for the day and everyone who is scheduled to work. Now, when that list is made, before the shift starts, we may have 2 or 3 people who call in sick. We may have someone who can't make it for another reason. We may have someone who is late. So when they send that information to our dispatch center, it has to be correct no matter if it says 0. It's going to be correct. So although that's what the worksheet says, that does not include supervisors, that does not include people who are still on duty from the other shift, and that does not include people who are held over from the prior shift. Our shifts are built with a 5-hour overlap. So even if our graveyard units come in at 9 o'clock and there's one person on the worksheet, our swing shift units don't get off work until 2 a.m. So all of those officers are still at work. So while it's easy to say, yeah, there's one person on this worksheet, there is never one person patrolling this city, and I want you to know that.
Okay. How is morale? This officer also said they thought morale was very low, but that is totally subjective.
Yeah, that is subjective, and I guess it really depends on who you ask. There are those who feel very good about the direction we're going and the things we're doing, and there are those who don't. And what I've learned, what I always knew, was that where there's dysfunction, there are always people who benefit from that dysfunction, and they will fight against trying to bring functionality to an organization because their benefit is over. So for the people who benefited from the dysfunction of Pine Bluff PD, they're not happy. But for the people who have put the work in, who have been loyal, who have done right, who have followed the rules, who have worked hard, they are happy. So whether or not the morale is bad really depends on who you ask and where they fall in the chain of command. Now, to me, it's good because when we make moves for the department, it's not just for one person. And I think a lot of times where we lost some faith from our men and women is there were some decisions that were made in the past by different chiefs that only benefited them or only benefited one person. And when you do that, of course, that's a hole you dig that you have to climb out of. And so whatever decisions I make for the department are never for me. They're never for one person. They are for the whole. And it's going to take some time to get people to understand that and understand who I am and where I'm coming from. But we're on our way.
So I got to ask this question. We've had Joni Alexander on here a couple of times. Once when she was a council member, and once earlier this year after she left the council. And I asked her, we talked about this both times, when an armed robbery involved her. And she said no one with the police department has ever talked to her about that incident. Why is that?
I can only speak for myself, and I did talk to Alderwoman Alexander, former Alderwoman Alexander, about her incident. Now, what she said to you, I don't know. But speaking for myself, I did reach out to her, and we did speak about it.
Any progress on that case? She claims that the only progress that's been made is because of efforts from her or her husband, or I guess from her husband.
That case, the progress that has been made has already been sent to the prosecutor. So I think we have a different idea of progress.
Okay. Pine Bluff gets called Crime Bluff a lot. It's just an easy thing to say, I guess. But is that a fair assessment? And if not, why not?
Absolutely not. I think any issues we have in Pine Bluff are not unique to Pine Bluff. You can pick any city that is growing, any city that has a concentration of people in a small space or small land area, and you're going to have crime. The crimes we have are no different than any other city, and I would say we are in better shape than many other cities because we know what our issues are and we have systems in place to move them forward in a positive way. I don't think we deserve that nickname at all.
Statistically, though, we are one of the most dangerous cities in the United States.
Not by my statistics.
And our murder rate is many times over the national average.
What statistic is that?
The per capita homicide rate. I think the national average is 7 per 100,000, and we're like 27.
That may have been the case when we had, let's say, 28, 29 murders. Surely that's not the case as of 2022 because our rate dropped, and surely just a few months into 2023, that's not the case. So, of course, this year we'll have to wait until the end to see how it shakes out, but I would beg to differ, and I would beg to differ.
How can a police department move the crime needle to a safer place?
The police department's job in that is really to be prepared because we do not know what's coming. Our goal is to always be prepared. For example, if we have an event here and we have a lot more people than we would normally have in a concentrated area, we know the possibility of something happening is greater. So what we do in those terms is try to move our resources to address it before it happens. And if we need to move resources after, we'll do that. So basically what we do to move that needle is to listen to the data, see where crime is occurring, watch the trends, see where it's maybe going next, use our technology to advance us to be prepared for it, and train our people in a way that they know what to do if it happens. We cannot predict it to a degree. Of course, you can't predict a murder. You can't predict a traffic accident. But if we have an intersection, for example, where we know we have a lot of fender benders, We know that if we don't put some enforcement there or petition the street department for new signs there, we know that potentially that's going to lead to a fatality accident. So when we write tickets, etc., we're writing those tickets to alter a person's driving behavior so that what was a fender bender today is not a fatality accident tomorrow. So when we use our resources, we use them in a way to change what's happening so that we can potentially change the outcome. We never know what that's going to be, but that's what we work toward.
That actually touches on one of my questions. Do we have units set up to, like with radar guns and monitor speeders?
We do.
I just
All
never
of
seen
our,
that.
yeah, well, you're not supposed to see it till it's too late. But yeah, all of our recruits who come out of the academy, they go through radar training there. So when they come back to us for their ride-alongs, they are radar certified. And we do have units that are specifically outfitted to run radar. We don't have specific traffic units anymore because we are short on manpower. But those officers who were assigned to traffic still have those skills, and we still use them in that capacity whenever we get a chance to. But there are several of our units that are equipped with radar, and we do use it.
Okay.
And we have some unmarked units that we have radar in.
Back to the question about moving a crime needle. You mentioned being prepared. I know Kevin Collins was an awfully close friend of yours. Professional and personal, I'm guessing. Is there anything that the police department has taken from the incident where he was killed? Have you all, were there mistakes made that day? Are there things that you wouldn't do today that took place that day to keep something like that from happening again?
Well, you know, I'm gonna watch what I say here because the trial for the person who killed Kevin is in a couple of months. So of course I don't want to say anything that would jeopardize that because we need that to be successful. But in terms of policy and or internally, what we would do different is make sure our communications are solid, make sure our leaders know that they are not lone rangers. We want them to know that they have support and they need to ask for it before they move. We would do anything to have that day back. And, you know, hindsight.
What would you do different today?
What would I do different today?
Yeah, would there be more officers descending on that motel?
I would say yes. I would say yes. Best case scenario, there would have been more people involved.
You know, it's been a while since this group has they held a series of press conferences, but they took some unscientific surveys of residents. Many people said they changed their habits. They went home early. They didn't want to be out after dark, and some said, a fair number of them said they were fearful to be even in their own homes. What do you tell people? And that's our citizens who claim that, you know, they are even scared to be home. I guess drive-by shootings or break-ins or whatever.
Right. Well, as you said, that is unscientific. But there are people who live in fear, and I think simply the constant opportunity to see crime over and over through social media, 24-hour news cycles, the things that are happening today, believe it or not, were happening in 1994. That year alone, we had more murders than we've had in the past 10 years, and that was 30 years ago. What we didn't have then was a constant news cycle. So you may or may not have heard about those. You may or may not have had to look at it over and over again. So I believe that being able to access the things that are going on in the community that are negative, that are criminal, I think it does paralyze people in a way that they are fearful in their own homes. And some of that is justified depending on where they live and what's going on there. So while I wouldn't invalidate that statement made by anyone, I will say this: a lot of people move about this city with no problem at all. And the majority of crimes that we have are not random. So this is as safe a community as any other. You take the same precautions that you would take anywhere else. You lock your doors anywhere else, lock them here. You check your surroundings anywhere else, check them here. You pay attention to what's going on around you anywhere else, you do that here. So while we have a lot of issues, they are not unique to us. And I don't think that it is fair to say that it is a problem that Pine Bluff has to overcome in a way that hasn't been done before. We are on an upward trend in terms of that. The majority of our offenders, criminal offenders, are repeat offenders. So it's easy to say that, the police department is not doing their job. We are arresting these people. We have over 500 absconders in Jefferson County alone. And by absconders, I mean people who are on parole and or probation and have not reported. And we run into these people, and we either have to have somewhere to put them or we have to release them. So while we are one spoke in the wheel, we're doing our part, and we're going to continue to do our part. But there are a lot of moving parts to the criminal justice system.
When Lloyd Franklin was chief, he said that a fair number of officers, he didn't have a count, but more than one, just needed to be gone. They were not good for the department. Do you have any feeling for that assessment of the department? I mean, does that ring true in any way?
Of course it does. Anytime you have an organization as big as ours, you're going to have some people there who never should have come in. You're going to have some people there who aren't carrying their weight. You're going to have some people there who should have been fired. So I agree with his statement.
Can you do anything as the chief?
Sure I can. And I've done it. You can start keeping better track of your officers, number one. And make sure they are living up to their potential in terms of productivity. Make sure they're following the rules. Of course, we have some people who have sort of slid through the cracks in terms of discipline. And my job is to make sure that doesn't happen again. And that's another way the software will help us be better prepared for anything that's coming. Anywhere you go, you're going to have some people who need to be fired or released or resign or demoted. And I do that.
When, again, another reference to Chief Franklin, but his program, Blue Rain, was, correct me if I described this poorly, but he was aggressively going after speeders, and he would stop somebody for what might be thought of as a minor infraction, just to rattle the cage, just to make it less comfortable for them to search the vehicle and make it less comfortable for people who might be intent on breaking the law to be comfortable here. It's like there's no place for you here. Are you doing any Blue Rain type activity? We
are, and Blue Rain is really an umbrella. So we have a lot of initiatives under that umbrella. One is our first campaign was, of course, Tag It or Bag It. And that was a campaign that was focused on expired temporary tags in the city. So we made a really good impact there with just a few officers. And what we do is take that money that would be a turnback fund, and we ask the council to move it into overtime funding. So we can use these officers in a way that is productive. It's a way, there's something for us to quantify, and they can make some money, and it makes a difference. So we, I don't even know how many tags we got, but it was over 100 in just a month's time with just a few officers working outside of their regular duty hours. Our second campaign will be for red lights and stop signs. People are running them, people are getting hurt, and we're going to focus on that starting March 1st. So yeah, we are still working under the Blue Rain umbrella. We are still using our resources to target what we want. We don't use these stops pretextually, as you mentioned, maybe to get into the car. We don't do that. If we get into a car, we do that based on search incident to arrest and or some more information we have. But when we use these campaigns, we're using the campaign just for their stated reason. And officers are really good about it. They come up with the campaigns themselves. They come up with the parameters. They present it to me, and we start doing it. So this is not something that I sit in the office and come up with. I ask them, which campaign do you see that we need to do next? Because you're out here working, you know what the problems are, and they tell me what they are, and we move forward. So yeah, Blue Rain is still active.
So describe the manpower problem or the people power problem.
Okay. Typically, our maximum is 131 as far as sworn personnel. And as you know, during Franklin's tenure, he presented to the council to take 15 of those positions away and give that money to our officers as a 15% raise, which is the biggest raise they've ever had at one time, a full 15%. So that dropped our maximum number to 116. And the council has promised that if we ever reach the 116 again, they will re-add the other 15 to bring us back up to 131. So we are not near that number. We are close to 100. And once again, that is because of the retiring and people losing their jobs, people choosing to work elsewhere. So the manpower issue, where the rubber meets the road, is our community programs. We have had to stop some of them simply because we don't have the manpower to do the work. We have to put the people on the street. They understand that. Same thing happened with our traffic unit. They're in patrol now. Our service units are in patrol now because that's our greatest need. So the reason it's important for us to get the number up is so that we don't lose connection with the community. So when it is time to do a program, our officers are not so worn out that they can still go and make a positive impact in the community.
You said, so the officers are not worn out. I think the police department has had some higher ranking officers move to other departments. And the officer I was talking to said that some of those have come back and have been brought back with open arms and put back in their same rank and their same positions. And this person said that was not great for morale. But is that still going on? And why does something like that go on? If you leave, you can just come back. Is there a length of time or?
Sure. We already had a city ordinance in place before I became chief of police that specified if an officer left this department willingly on good terms, they had the option within 12 months to return to this department. That was on the books already.
Okay.
So the person you're talking to, I'm sure they don't know that. So when I became chief, it was important to me to create a lateral transfer option for officers, number one, who wanted to relocate to Pine Bluff, who were certified and had experience and a good record. So that's what I did. I wrote the legislation, I presented it to the city attorney, they put it in the proper form, and the council put it into place. All 8 signed on as co-sponsors, and all 8 voted for it. Now that's unprecedented. So we moved the lateral option into place, number one. And in addition to that, I added one other thing to the legislation, and it too was voted in. These are legal options for us. Number one, we had lost 3 supervisors, and these 3 supervisors had almost 50 years of experience that Pine Bluff paid for. Now they left because they had personal reasons, number one, and or our money, our pay did not match up with where they were going. We lost all 3 of them in the span of 1 year. So when I wrote the legislation, I wrote it and I asked for the council to give me the option to petition those supervisors to come back in their same position, but they had to have been gone less than 1 year. And they all had been gone less than 1 year. That option sunsetted December 31st, 2022. So they had a few months, they had 6 months to make the decision whether or not to return to Pine Bluff and work here. All 3 of them came back. We got our supervisors back. We got our investment back that the city made in them in terms of training and cost, and they went straight back to work with 0 training because they are familiar. They had spent 10, 12, 13 years here working. Now, what sense would it make for me as a chief to not try to bring our people home? Now, I understand that there are people in the department who may not have liked that because they felt like it would hinder their opportunity to be promoted. But I'm here to tell you that the people who told you that are probably not even in line to be promoted, because the first thing they have to do is pass the test. The second thing they have to do is have a clean record. The third thing they have to do is be progressive and positive. Now, that's a hard bucket to fill for some officers. So if we have good people who leave here, it makes good common sense to get them back here. Now, if we have officers who shouldn't be here, who are abusive, who are a disciplinary problem, who are negative, and who are harmful to the overall goals, I want them out. And I would never try to get them back if they left. But these 3 officers are the cream of the crop. They went to their new departments and excelled immediately. And to this day, those departments are trying to get them back. That's how important they are to law enforcement. So while I know that it was not very popular, I'll tell you this. If we did not have those 3 supervisors on the street right now, the condition we would be in would be dire. And that is due to retirement. That is due to the fact that we have not had a promotional exam since 2020. And we're getting ready to do that. So they really filled in a gap that we would never have been able to get across. So I know exactly the people you're talking about. I know that they have threatened to sue me. But what I also know is that everything we've done has been vetted through the municipal league. It has gone through the proper channels with the city council. It has gone through the city attorney, and there's no way we would have all put it into place if there were anything wrong about it. And I'll stand by that.
Okay. I've jotted down several follow-up questions. Why did it sunset at the end of?
It sunsetted because we did not want to leave it open to where it did harm to anyone in the future. We don't want to leave that door open forever. You have a certain amount of time to come back. Number 1, there's no one on the list to be promoted. There's no list. Number 2, there was no test scheduled. Number 3, if you come back in this position and go straight back to work, no one has to move. No one is harmed. We just take care of the business of policing in Pine Bluff. So we wanted to put a sunset on there so that it would not be constantly open and a threat to anyone who maybe would get on the promotional list this year.
It's like if it was always open, it would just be a constant lure to like, well, I'll just
Right.
go try out
That's right.
North Little Rock for a
That's
while.
right. So I was very specific about the timing, because if we sunset it in December 22, as we move into 23, it's not an option anymore. It's not a problem anymore. We are moving on. I'm a progressive person. If I have something to do, I'm going to do it, and we're going to go on to the next step. So our next step is, of course, to have a promotional exam and create us a list so that we can pull from that list and put new people in position to do these jobs.
So explain the promotional exam and not having it, and now you're going to have it. Why has it been on hold? And
It's been on hold for several reasons. Number 1 was manpower, because when you move people out of patrol, you have to be able to replace those people. So even if we had a promotional exam, we may not have had enough people to work shifts to move those folks up.
So this would be for patrol people to move.
This would
not
be
necessarily for like sergeant to move to lieutenant.
Yes, it would. There's more than one promotional exam because there's more than one rank. So what we plan to do is test our patrolmen for sergeant's positions, test our sergeants for lieutenant's positions, and test our lieutenants for captain's positions. That is the plan. And the only way we could do that and be fair about it is to not have an open door for people to come back when the process began. We were not in the middle of that process at all. We hadn't started it. It hadn't been done in 3 years. So there's absolutely no one who would have been put second behind the people who came back. So the process is initially testing. Once they make it past the test, then they will go into the next phase, which would be an oral interview and or practical exam. And once that's done, we take all of the criteria for their point system, put them into place, and create a list. And from that list, I will promote.
What are some obstacles to hiring police officers in Pine Bluff? Why is it so hard? What is the starting pay?
The starting pay is $40,000. It's a little over $40,000. I want to say $383, but don't quote me. It's $40,000 and change. And after
So
1 year,
$20 an hour, probably a little less than that.
It's around 19 and change, I believe. But after their first year, once they're done with the academy and they become certified, it moves to $43,000. And after that, you get increases per year up to the maximum.
So they don't go to the academy first and then say, I want a job. They come to you and say, I want a job, and you say, you hire them based on you get out of academy, then you come back.
No, we hire them. And we send them to the academy, and we pay them while they're in the academy. But before they go through our internal program of just getting acclimated to the geography, to a new way of life, to what policing is. So we keep them here for a few weeks and get them prepared for academy training. And then they go to the academy at East Camden for 13 weeks. If they graduate the academy, we bring them back for a 3-month program where they go through their field training officers. And if they make it through that process, then we release them to solo patrol.
How many of them don't get out of academy?
Typically, if we have 3 or 4 people in the academy, one of them won't make it.
One won't make it?
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine many years ago was in the academy in California, and one error during the scenarios was enough. It's like, well, you failed.
It's enough. So the reason we take time with them before they go is because we want them to know how important it is that they make it through the academy. If you're tossed out of the program, you can't even reapply again for 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we need them to understand before they go, before we start paying them a salary and send them there to represent Pine Bluff, how serious it is. So we stay in touch with them. Our trainers stay in touch with them the whole way. If they're having a problem, yeah, how's it going? If they're having a problem on the firing range, or they're having a problem with PT or just the classroom work, we try to give them a little extra help to get them through.
Where do they fail mostly in that endeavor? And you have to run a mile in 7 minutes, and that.
Yeah, you have to do some PT, and they're very good about making accommodations for people who may not be where they should be, and to try to get them through the program. It's not prohibitive in a way that they're trying to weed you out. They're trying to put you through. So I think in the past, where we have had people with the most trouble is firearms training. A lot of people aren't used to shooting 200-300 rounds through a gun a day, and it becomes too much. But when they come home on the weekend, our trainers are so dedicated that they will take them to our firing range. We've even had people from the county step in, and if they don't respond well to me, or they don't respond well to our trainer, other people will come in and get them familiar with the course, get them familiar with firearms, and they do extremely well. And the other, I think the hardest part of the academy is probably Accident Reconstruction Week. There's a lot of math involved. There's a lot of accident reconstruction. It's for traffic. So the traffic week, typically if we lose people due to testing and classroom work, it's during that week. It's difficult.
Here's a wreck. Tell me what happened.
Tell me what happened. And they do more in the academy than they do on the streets, because we have dedicated people here who are in charge of accident reconstruction. We have specialists that are on our roster that we call out when it is a fatality or it looks like it may be, and they handle the measurements, pretty much what the state police does. So that course is actually taught during our training at the academy, and if we lose an officer to classroom, it's usually that week.
That sounds kind of intimidating.
It can be.
You just got a mess out there.
We just let them know, take your time and do the math, and we're here to help you. So our hope is always that they'll reach out if they start struggling, and we send our trainers down there to talk to the people at the academy to check up on them.
So one of the reasons, and this another reference to Chief Franklin, but when I was talking to him once, he said people are leaving because there's more work here. And he broke that down to just service calls. Fewer service. I go to North Little Rock, and they don't expect you to answer as many service calls as we do here in Pine Bluff. That's just indicative of the fact that we don't have that many officers, and everybody has to carry a few more.
We have a heavy call load. In January alone, we answered over 3,000 calls for service. That's a lot of calls. By the end of the year, we'll be between 26,000 and 30,000 calls for service. And it's no different than any other city that is growing or has a lot of people in it. We have a lot of highways here. We have a lot of movement here. So we do have a lot of calls, but so does North Little Rock, so does Little Rock, so does Fort Smith, so does Fayetteville. This is what we do, and we're accustomed to it. We know it's coming, and we prepare for it. When you're in policing, I don't care where you go, you're going to be behind on calls to a degree in a city as this size. So yeah, we answer a lot of calls for service, and our officers do a tremendous amount of work, which is why it's important that we focus on getting them a living wage. You know, whatever it is you think is enough is not enough. And we may or may not have the money in general funding to make sure our officers are above par in terms of what they earn. And I will say this, our best bet for taking proper care of our officers is a tax. And no one likes to hear that.
Is a tax.
Is a tax. We're going to have dedicated funding that is for public safety, not for anything else. And when we get that funding, if the people would vote that for us, we don't need the city to pull back what's already in the budget. We need to keep the money that's in the budget, and we need to add the money that will come from the tax. That is what will put us ahead. That is what will give us the money to create a real-time crime center in the future. That is what will give us the edge in terms of technology and make this city safer. You cannot do it out of regular general funding.
So is $40,000 starting pay, is that good?
No, it is not.
What's north of Rock Star? Are we at the bottom end of the?
We are not at the bottom. We are, we've actually moved up just a little bit, but I will tell you this, a city the size of El Dorado has a higher starting rate of pay than we do.
What are they, a third our size?
A third at least.
Then they have a higher starting pay?
They do.
How did we get in that situation?
I think.
I mean, we've been staring at this problem for since probably before.
There's more than one reason. One reason is people don't understand what's going on in law enforcement, and they don't understand how critical it is that you have qualified people. Well, the way you do that is you pay them a living wage. So if we constantly try to stay at the bottom because you think it's enough money, you ask the people who are doing the work and they'll tell you it's not enough money. And if they keep telling you this year after year after year and you don't listen, you are going to lose your police department. So we as a people who live in this city have to be dedicated to public safety, not just in speech, but we have to do something. Now, 3/8 of a cent is nothing for a person to pay. But with all of us paying it, it is significant. And if we can use that money to shore up salaries for police and fire, to make sure we have the right equipment, to make sure that our technology is above board, we're going to have a much safer city. It's going to cost everybody a little bit, and that's just a little bit.
Okay. So you mentioned officers at the academy and the firing range, and that I know guns are just the holy grail in the South and in Arkansas, and you know, everybody professes love for their guns, but are there too many guns on the street? I mean, and I reference that because I know they changed the law a few years ago, and it was I was teaching at UAPB, and the police chief there told the teachers, he said, if somebody comes into your class and they obviously have a gun, you can't ask them about having a gun if they have a increased permit to carry that gun, and they don't have to register it with anybody. So it just seemed ludicrous to me, but that's the law. Yeah. Do those kind of things rub you the wrong way? I mean, when you go to a scene, you don't know who's got a gun, the good guy, the bad guy.
Our assumption is that everybody's armed.
Your assumption is that everybody's armed.
Yeah.
You're probably not far off, right?
Not far off. So yeah, there are a lot of guns on the street. Arkansas is an open carry state. There has been some ambiguity from
meaning
our state offices in terms of their opinion on how we as police are supposed to handle these situations, because on the one hand we have concealed carry, which requires a permit, and enhanced concealed carry, and on the other hand we have open carry. You know, so our police officers are constantly struggling with when to approach, how to approach, and we really do not have a clear-cut answer from the state of Arkansas. So that causes a problem locally, because locally now you can determine for yourself how you want your agency to respond. And 80% of the police departments in Arkansas have less than 10 people in them. So they can respond however they want. So we really need more clear-cut legislation in terms of how we respond as
How do we
police.
respond to that here? If there's a festival on Main
Very,
Street and
very
somebody's
carefully.
got a revolver on there,
Very carefully, it could go bad really quickly because you have to determine, you have to approach. And anytime you have to approach a person who is armed, there's always the potential for that to get out of hand. But our job is to determine if they are legally carrying that gun. And of course, if they're a felon, that's something we would have to find out. If they have intent, that's something we would have to find out. If it's just for personal protection. A lot of unknowns. And the weight of that is placed on patrol officers, and with not a lot of support from the state in terms of the laws that we use to determine that. And they're changing very fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a couple more questions. I'm wondering, well, the last question I want to ask you is just a broader question about police. A lot of negative vibes about police these days. I was looking, I just Googled police killing unarmed people, and a Wikipedia page comes up, and it's not like every day, but it's a lot. And the most recent, not the most recent, there's been one since then, but the case in Memphis, where the man died 3 days later after being beaten. So the short question is, how many of our officers have body cams? Because it seems that the only way we know what happened to somebody is that if there's a body cam, or if there's a camera somewhere, or somebody filming it, taping it, because the police's description of what went on is sometimes totally different than what actually happened when you actually get to see the video. So do we have body cams?
Absolutely.
Everybody's got a body cam.
Everybody who works patrol in uniform has a body camera.
Dash cam?
Dash cam and body camera, those are two different systems.
Yep.
And they are all equipped with that capability. Our sergeants are also recently equipped with body cameras because they weren't wearing them. We didn't have enough. But we have enough now where they're wearing them. Our vice officers have asked for them, and we have ordered those. So anyone who has regular public contact is going to be wearing a body camera and or a dash camera.
Okay, the bigger question is, where do police fit in today? I mean, like I said, there is a lot of mistrust of the police department. The police department, for many people, are the bad guys. They are the ones that you can't trust. I mean, it's at a point where I hear people saying they should just get rid of the police department. I'm not there. A lot of people aren't there. But is there a better way to provide public safety than the police answering every call and then doing it? And I asked that because that was a special force in Memphis that is now being charged with murder. Those guys, those officers, and they said that there is a mindset, us against them. So I'll just wash all that into one question. Just give me your take on where policing is today. Where is it in Pine Bluff, and do you train people here for that not to happen? Because every time that happens, I think, have you not seen, how could you do that having seen the news for the last 2 years or 5 years of people killing some unarmed person?
Right. My answer to that for Pine Bluff specifically is it is our job to hire the right people. And I think a lot of the problems that we have faced in this city and across the country is due to negative hiring, negative promoting, and negative retention. I think when you have an officer who has had over a course of years 17, 18 disciplinaries, several complaints of excessive force, whether sustained or not, you have to know that person does not need to be in the profession. Policing, it's difficult to move people out of your roster. Number one, if you do fire them, they have the option to appeal. And they're appealing to civilians who don't know what we know. So they have an option of getting their job back. When they really shouldn't be in the profession at all. Police officers also move around a lot. So if you get in trouble here, you might go down the road, and because they are short as well, they'll hire a certified officer who was about to get fired here. So there's a lot of moving around of police who are bad police officers. It is up to chiefs to, at whatever cost it is, move them out of the ranks of policing. And I think when you have an abusive human being and you put a badge on them, you're going to have an abusive police officer, period. So we have to dig a little deeper. We have to do more work to make sure we're bringing in the kind of people that we would be comfortable turning loose on our society.
Do you ever just gather everybody up and say, let's talk about what happened in Memphis?
We do. Typically, our officers are younger. They're very good about discussing things. You know, older officers are not. So we leave that in the hands of our very capable sergeants and FTOs, and they do talk very openly and very honestly with all of our officers about current events and how it affects them, because what people seem to forget is that we are human. And when we see what you see, it, number one, it affects us as well. It hurts us as well. Not only do we have to process what we see as regular people, we have to process it in a way so that when we go to work, it's not in front of our minds. It does not affect how we treat people. And we teach our officers to disengage. And the danger in that is that they'll disengage completely. But we have to teach them how not to be provoked when they are being provoked.
Is that
and
part
it's a process.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's a process.
Is that part of training that they do at the in Camden?
I can't say that it is, but I would bet, with Camden being at the forefront of what's necessary to build new police officers, that it is included. I wouldn't say that without looking at the curriculum, but without looking at the curriculum, I would say absolutely. And we do that here. For example, if we have a new patrolman or patrolwoman and they step out of their car on a call, and before they can even check out on the radio, someone is in their face with a cell phone. Now, that's difficult to manage if you're 24. That's difficult. So we do try to let our officers know that this is what you have to face, and it's just part of the job. Learn how to deal with it effectively so that you don't infringe upon anyone's rights and that you are protecting yourself. So it is a part of what we train our officers to do here, because we know that when the national narrative amps up, it's going to amp up locally as well. So we try to train our officers to be prepared for it, to disengage when you have to, and stay on the course of doing your work. Even in the face of those obstacles, we work in the public. People want to know what we're doing. They have a right to know. And we have to learn how to operate under a microscope every day.
I think we're about out of time. I'm getting waves from people. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, I don't.
Should I have asked you something that I didn't?
Oh, I'm sure there's something, but you know, I appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk about our police department. We are in transition. We are looking toward the future. We are never looking at today in terms of where we're moving to. We want to be better. We want to be bigger, and we just want to be more solid for the people we serve. When there were so many protests going on around this country, we didn't have any. And that is because we, as a department, are reflective of this community. And while we know we have people who are anti-police, for everyone here, there are 4 who are pro-police. Our job is to take care of everybody. But we know that the people who care for us and who support us vastly outnumber the people who don't in Pine Bluff, and we're going to serve them accordingly.
Okay.
That's it.
Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
It's about time. Thank you, Byron.